coming to speak to us. She's the Executive Director for Center for SDG, Global Education USA. She's the President of Barjuni and Irene Menekaya Foundation International. She's a proprietor as well, the Irene Menekaya School in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me make welcome Dr. Ada Ukika as she comes to speak to us. Dr. Ada, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bannister. Just a brief of the highlights of the 2021 UN Day of Education that was held virtually on January the 25th. Due to the present global challenge, the 2021 Day of Education was held virtually, and these are highlights from the virtual and video presentations. The UNESCO Director General, Audrey Azoulay, noted we must make education our priority in recovery plans. The Assistant Director General for Education, Stephanie Gianni, noted we are here to celebrate and alert. Education is under threat. 2/3 of the global student population are still affected by full and partial school closures. From the new UNESCO data, we are informed that 1 year into the COVID-19 pandemic, over 800 million students were more than half of the world's student population, still face significant disruptions to their education, ranging from full school closures in 31 countries to reduced or part-time academic schedules in another 48 countries. The United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, in a video message informed, when education is interrupted, it affects everyone, especially students, teachers, and families, he said. The pandemic has dashed hopes of a brighter future among vulnerable populations. Education is a foundation for expanding opportunities, transforming economies, fighting intolerance, protecting the planet, and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Stressing the urgency to address social and economic inequalities, His Excellency Volkan Bozkır, the President of 75th UN General Assembly, informed recovery priorities for education. Let me be clear, SDG 4 is not just about the classroom. It is about society. Education has the power to break the cycle of poverty and conflict. Education can also build media and information literacy, producing global citizens who are better able to engage critically in the world. His Excellency Ambassador Og Ing, Deputy Permanent Representative of Norway to the United Nations and the chair of the Group of Friends for Education and Lifelong Learning, honored the role of teachers throughout this crisis. He commemorated the tireless efforts of teachers, school administrators, government officials, and other dedicated individuals who have made possible that children and youth continue to learn, even against the largest disruption of our education system due to COVID-19 pandemic. His Excellency Ambassador Tijan Mohammed Bande, the permanent representative of Nigeria to United Nations, called on all education stakeholders to put education at the center of their response and recovery for COVID-19. He further noted the notion of leaving no one behind should start with education as the greatest investment for society and the most effective equalizer. Christopher Du, a blind activist from Burkina Faso, talked about his efforts in making education available for visually impaired learners by scanning textbooks and making them accessible to students in his country. Mala Vasquez, a teacher from Honduras, explained how she was determined to make sure that children receive adequate meals at home during school closures with support from the World Food Program, together with learning resources. For some children, their only meals were the ones provided by school. Durata, a teacher from Albania who supported the broadcasting of classes on national television, said, teachers must be trained and equipped for digital skills to best respond to student needs everywhere. Jamie Frost, winner of the Vary Foundation's COVID-19 Hero Award and creator of a math learning platform, emphasized the role of technology in education and its continuity. While technology can't replace teachers and classroom teaching, it can cover and make learning possible. Ake from Ministry of National Education in Turkey, a country hosting the largest refugee population in the world, explained initiatives to prevent learning losses, including the provision of learn-at-home kits, storybooks, and hygiene needs, with support from UNICEF. Alan Godman, president of Institute of International Education, highlighted the challenging financial situation that foreign students faced around the world during the lockdown and the lessons learned to better face such an emergency in the future, but was convinced that after every pandemic, the surge for international student mobility quickly resumes. Nyera Dazi from African Union's Goodwill Ambassador on Ending Child Marriage and Chief Executive of Rosaria Memorial Trust, stressed that governments around the world needed to take bold decisions to make sure that learning never stops for students. We need daring, bold, and courageous financing right now, she noted. Debt cancellation is key for countries to be able to continue to spend more on education. The Director of Global Education at the World Bank, Jamin Savadra, said in a video message, we need to use the window of opportunity that this pandemic opens, not only to build back, but to build forward a more effective, equitable, and resilient education. Jutta Upland, the EU Commissioner for Partnership, stated, education is the most powerful tool to build back better. It is crucial for the future of all children. That's why he decided to increase the education budget from 7% to 10%. With these highlights, we'll open the floor to this pertinent discussion on rebranding teachers for sustainable teaching and learning in the COVID era and the decade of action, by inviting a special guest speaker, His Excellency, Professor Mohammed Bande, the permanent representative of Nigeria to United Nations and the former president of UN General Assembly 74 section. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, at the outset, I would like to commend the organizers and our hosts, as well as by an invitation to me to deliver the opening remarks on this auspicious occasion. I would also like to thank our moderator and speakers who will be discussing one of the defining issues of our day, quality education. Distinguished guests, there's no denying the fact that education remains a significant aspect of development. It's a fundamental pillar for unleashing the potential of the human mind. From health advances and agricultural innovations to efficient public administration and private sector growth, the one key tool that has made this possible worldwide is education. The phenomenal advancement of the global north is one prime example where education has served to build a resilient society, spur job creation, and poverty eradication, among others. For all countries, progress has been recorded for more accessible and inclusive education since the turn of the millennium. The COVID-19 pandemic is, however, threatening to reverse much of the gains we have made thus far. It's also sad to note that many people in the developing world are still facing significant barriers to access to free and qualitative education. The adoption on 3rd December 2018 of the landmark United Nations General Assembly resolution declaring 24th January every year as International Day of Education has thus provided opportunity to explore more innovative ways of increasing the reach of education and enhancing partnerships that would make quality education not only more accessible, but also more sustainable. This is even more so as the ethical principle of Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development enjoins us to leave no one behind. A reminder to pay special attention to those in vulnerable situations. Distinguished guests, it's no exaggeration to say that COVID-19 has been devastating for education, as it has resulted in unprecedented school closures. Over 1.6 billion students have experienced a disruption in education. In effect, 94% of the world's students have been impacted, with students in low and lower to middle income countries being the most affected. For the most vulnerable children, including girls and children with disabilities and children in fragile contexts, return to school is not guaranteed. This will affect their literacy achievements. It will also threaten their analytical and critical thinking skills, thus affecting their capacity for tolerance and intercultural dialogue. The stakes for the well-being and health of our society's distinguished colleagues are that high. The pandemic is exacerbating pre-existing inequalities. Today, millions of students are unable to access the internet at home. Even in the most endowed countries, parents are struggling to balance work commitments and the needs of learning remotely. Moreover, two-thirds of teachers are not equipped with the skills to deliver online learning. Clearly, some lessons are being learned so far from the pandemic, that education cannot be totally dependent on delivery models bound to a specific time and or location. Technology will continue to play an even stronger role in the future of education. Distance learning platforms will improve and provide more virtual and adaptive experiences and assimilate them into the instructional process. Open educational resources and pedagogy will be more greatly integrated into the curricula, broadening the community of teachers and learners. However, the resilience of these systems would depend on several factors, such as financing, training, retraining, infrastructure, and above all, cooperation and partnership between and among states, as well as between other jurisdictions. Despite demonstrable decades-long progress around the world, at the onset of the pandemic, estimates showed that some 265 million children were out of school, and this figure was projected to fall to 220 by 2030. More than half of the students who were enrolled in school were not meeting minimum proficiency standards in reading and mathematics. Over 130 million girls were out of school, and over 1 billion girls and young women lacked the skills they needed to succeed in a rapidly developing world. During the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly, which I had the honor to preside over, we chose quality education SDG 4 as one of the overarching priorities of the session and ensured it was mainstreamed throughout the work of the Assembly and beyond. Recognizing that quality education is important and the fact that no nation can develop past its educational capacity, we worked to ensure that member states partnered on teacher training, access to free and quality primary and secondary education, among others. In 2015, the United Nations adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and committed to achieving equal access to quality education for all. We must ensure that we urgently tackle the disruptions the pandemic has already caused to education around the world. As we recover and rebuild from the 2019 pandemic, I call on governments and all stakeholders to mainstream education in their response to mitigate conflict, hunger, poverty, and instability which weaken a student's ability to learn. In order to learn, students require a safe learning environment, free from bullying, as well as adequate sanitation facilities and clean running water, a safe path to school, as well as safety in the schools, electricity, modern infrastructural materials, and internet connectivity. It is therefore clear that we can only make gains on implementing SDG 4 if we approach it as a cross-cutting area which spans multiple portfolios. It is a truism that no educational system can rise above the quality of its teachers. We must do more to ensure that we have adequately trained teachers. In addition, due consideration should be paid to the importance of curricula, as strong curricula taught by well-trained teachers is essential to ensuring a high level of learning which meet the needs of students and the needs of continually changing society. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues, as we begin the decade of action and delivery to implement the Sustainable Development Goals, there can be no barriers to entry into education. Education is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And as such, it is our responsibility to guarantee that it is upheld in all contexts. We must guarantee, at a minimum, universal access to basic education for every child, everywhere. It is imperative to highlight that education is the great equalizer. And if we fail to invest in our people, we'll fail in ensuring that they live dignified, meaningful, and prosperous lives. In this regard, we cannot afford to forget about children and young people with disabilities, those who are often most at risk of being left behind. We must make sure that facilities meet the needs of all children so that they can achieve their goals. We must encourage and equally enable girls to study and have careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM. According to the World Bank, ensuring that girls complete at least 12 years of education would add $30 trillion to the global economy. Including girls in education is not just the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do. In conclusion, Excellencies, I wish to remind that as we build back better, we have a moral obligation to guarantee that this pandemic does not widen existing educational gaps. The notion of leaving no one behind should start with education as the greatest investment for society and most effective equalizer. This necessarily requires genuine and enduring partnerships across communities and states. I urge us all to give support to this endeavor. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Mohammed Bandi, the permanent representative to the mission, sorry, of the Nigerian country to the UN. Thank you very much to you, sir. So coming to the latter part of the program now, we will be hearing from Ambassador Nandi Nizi, if I pronounce it correctly. Please, if I did not, please make sure you pronounce it correctly. Dr. Ada has been working with me to pronounce this name all morning. He's the permanent mission of Nigeria to the United Nations. Ambassador, over to you, sir.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with barely less than 9 years left to the expiration of the global community's timeline for the realization of our collective aspirations, as clearly articulated in the United Nations Agenda 2030 on Sustainable Development. This conversation is not only timely, but urgent. The year 2020 is an extraordinary year in recent human history. The resurgence of COVID-19 pandemic around the world has led to catastrophic results in which public health system is devastated and the well-being of people is threatened. At the same time, as has been said earlier on this conversation that we have today, the pandemic has brought profound impact on education, forcing 1.6 billion students out of school during the peak of the pandemic. Governments and education sector around the globe have stepped in to fill that void and to ease the disturbance and fight against the pandemic to protect students' right to education. They have shown us how to prevail in the face of the major disasters with mankind's courage and wisdom. In the past year, as we can see from various countries, we have taken measures in protecting the lives of students and teachers alike from the prevalence of this newly emerging disease, COVID-19. It is important to state that in the face of the pandemic, the world has upheld the principle of people first and life first. This approach puts teachers and students' safety and health in the first place. In this regard, we have ensured the safety of both students and teachers by mobilizing all possible resources in a very precise and scientific way. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is important to state that education bridges the past, the present, and the future, as it is what makes us who we are and what we will be. Education is the strong instrument to human development. Mankind is confronted with a range of challenges and reforms at the moment. With the growth of technological innovation, a new round of scientific and technological revolution, compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic, is now driving the global education reform. There is a pressing need for all stakeholders to work together to deal with emerging challenges in the future. We must therefore educate for global competence. The interconnected world that we live in right now requires the young generation to be competent in living and working in a diverse environment. Education for global competence therefore becomes one of the primary goals for the education sector. Education for global competence aims to strengthen education on sustainable development and to help students understand that mankind lives in a community that shares the same future. It also seeks to promote students' understanding of other cultures, teaches them to appreciate the differences, fosters their ability in examining issues with a global perspective, and cultivate in them a will for the well-being of mankind. The students should be armed with knowledge, skills, perspectives, and values for sustainable development. And this is where the important role of teachers come to play. Our teachers today must be trained and retrained to meet with the changing dynamics of the society. We must stand together to build an educated community on a global scale. People throughout the world live in the same global village now, and countries are more interconnected as we have become a community that shares the same destiny. We can only achieve lasting stability and development through strengthening solidarity, partnership, and cooperation. In order to achieve the educational goals and the sustainable development goals, it not only depends on the governance capabilities and trajectory of development of each country, but also relies on the dynamics of global education governance. Indeed, the prospect that COVID-19 will worsen existing education inequalities is a grim one, but it is not inevitable. Indeed, the pandemic could be a critical catalyst to propel us to action. The solution to this, as to many other problems, especially concerning education, depends on national actions, international cooperation, and partnership. We need to look into the future with determination and commitment in order to turn this crisis into an opportunity. It has shown the capacity of systems to innovate, expanding the frontiers of learning possibilities, the enterprise of teachers to ensure learning continuity, and highlighted the immense value education holds for learners, families, and communities. Its implications for national development are also very, very clear. We must take advantage of technological innovation to turn this crisis for education into opportunity. Under the fourth industrial revolution, the world is practicing artificial intelligence, new materials, virtual reality, quantum information, etc. We are witnessing a radical transition of innovative solutions from quantitative changes to qualitative changes. The revolution will definitely change the way of life and the world we know now. In other words, the scope and boundaries of education sector is underway to be re-imaged and redefined. We must make full use of the major opportunities brought about by technological innovation, by which science and technology can become a breakthrough for global crisis and a transformative force that leads to the realization of sustainable development goals. As I conclude, I should like to emphasize that COVID-19 has begun a transformation in the world. We cannot afford to miss the momentum created by the changes now taking place to decisively tackle educational gaps and the related inequalities that exist. It is therefore my intention to call on all stakeholders, governments, partners, to address the systemic and structural issues that hamper access to education, so that together we can create a world truly fit for all, where no one is left behind. I thank you for your attention.